So, Ivan, welcome to the show. I think as an audience, we all really want to know is, how did you use media technologies in the construction and research and planning and evaluation of your pieces? Can you name us all the pieces of hardware and software that you used in your piece?
The hardware and software that I used throughout pre-production, production and post-production included stuff like in pre-production, my research side of making the film. I was looking through things like SlideShare and stuff like that to find theorists in order to fit in with the conventions of my piece. So, for example, looking at SlideShares and e-mazes and stuff like that of Todorov taught me that I needed to follow the whole equilibrium, disequilibrium narrative structure. So that was sort of research planning. Then going into production, I had my camera, which obviously is being used now, and the tripod, which is being used now. I also used things like this microphone in order to sort of, get a better audio experience for the viewer, as I didn't feel that the Canon HD was good enough in terms of picking up audio, which I found, that was sort of a technical difficulty that I found throughout my filming. And then I also used things like this Osmo DJI, which is used to sort of make a more stable shot. However, it did use I had to plug my iPhone into it, which meant that, you didn't get as HD as the Canon would have got. Therefore, I didn't use it as much as the Canon, even though I did think about using it. So that's how I sort of got the most professional look to a film as possible. And then in post-production, I used things like Final Cut Pro to cut, and things like Filmstro, which got the majority of the music in my piece.
A lot of our viewers tend to like to know what blog did you use in the end for displaying everything you'd done, and why did you use it?
I used Weebly because I thought that it shows your sort of portfolio of work in quite a professional way, and it does it in order of when you've done it, and you can change the date of when you do things to make it sort of easier to look at, easier to find where things are, and just easier to set out your work in the way that you want to, in a sort of professional way, without backgrounds and titles and stuff taking away from your work. So that's why I used that.
Yeah, of course.
And also I had experience in it from previous years. In GCSE year, for example, where I did use I used Weebly for my blog as well. So I had experience in it, and I thought it was a professional way of showing my portfolio. So that's why I used that.
So I know you talked about all the technologies in your film, but would you like to go into a little more detail about the different stages and stuff that you used, what and where and why?
Yeah, so in terms of going into more detail about pre, post and production, I would say that the technologies I used were sort of in different parts. So for example, throughout I used the Canon with the tripod to sort of deliver a better feel. However, when seeing things like the car driving towards the two boys as they're running away, you can see I've used the Osmo because it in a moving car it's very sort of bumpy and stuff like that, and it was on grass as well, so it was very bumpy. So I wanted to use that Osmo to give a stiller image. You've then got things like the microphone, which I used throughout all of the voiceovers, and this was to sort of again give a better audio experience for the viewer, and it also just it means that you can hear everything better over the music, which is quite intense throughout the montage scene and quite loud. And finding when in previous work I've done, it was difficult to get a better audio experience. So that's why I used the microphone in bits like the voiceover. Then you've got things like in pre-production, using the research of other films and stuff like that, and using SlideShares. I've seen conventions, helped with looking at the narrative of my film and writing the script, etc. And the storyboard, and looking at narrative made it a lot easier. You've then got post-production, which I'll go into a little more detail about. For example, using Final Cut Pro meant that all of the titles in my piece were easy to implement. I had experience again from GCSE in using Final Cut Pro, and it just delivers a simpler way of being able to edit stuff together, and that's why it's used in a lot of real media texts, because it's just a lot easier way to edit your film to look a lot more professional. Tutorials are easy on it as well to do, so mainly down to the experience of me using it. However, I did find technical difficulty of using this would be that I didn't have it at home. So on my home computer, I didn't have Final Cut Pro, so it made it a lot harder to edit outside of school where there is Final Cut Pro, sort of limiting my time a lot more, rather than being able to do it when I get home.
What about the evaluation stages, such as now? Would you say that you used a diverse range of ways for the examiner to mark your work effectively, using the skills that you'd acquired over the 4 years of media studies that you've done at your school?
Yeah, I mean, I did use a lot of the skills that I gained from the 4 years of my media to sort of give the examiner an easier way of marking my piece. But the evaluations, thinking about stuff like technology, I used a Canon for all of my evaluations, and then I used iMovie and Final Cut Pro to edit all of the things together. And in wanting to use my skills, it was important that I had Final Cut Pro and iMovie, because if you look at my evaluation question 1 or 2, specifically 1, I had a lot of screenshots in there and animations and stuff which I was showing through clips of stuff I was talking about. And without that, it would have been not only very boring, but also would have looked very amateur, and also it would have just been harder to follow, harder to see what I mean when I say, in this part of the movie I did this, etc., etc. Then showing that part of the movie meant that it was easier for the examiner to know what I was talking about, even though they had seen it. And then in 2, you can see I'm using Google Slides, which was a great piece of technology that I was using to sort of deliver my message across. However, again, using QuickTime Pro to screen record and use my audio from my phone to put over the top meant that you're not just reading a presentation, it's not really boring hearing my voice and talking you through it, and I can add a lot of more detail about what I'm saying. Rather than pages and pages of writing, I can sort of explain stuff, I can show visuals, etc. So that's why the technology in that part was, vital to my evaluations. And then obviously you see in this one, using it in terms of editing between interviewer and the person answering. And then even in 3, looking at the presentation, it was easy to see that an app like that can really help you deliver sort of a message that's better than a presentation, or at least better than just talking to the screen.
And in terms of distribution and exhibition, how do you think that the technologies that are around today have changed your view on how you would go about those things? And did you think about those things when you were making the film, and why?
Yeah, distribution and exhibition, thinking about those two, it definitely changes with the technology that's recently been introduced over sort of last 10 years or so in Web 2.0. You've really seen a big advance in these ways. So thinking about distribution, rather than having to send a full film reel across the world, if you have a global blockbuster, which not only is very expensive but is also very hard, because you need hard copies, you need sending prices, all of that stuff, which just adds to a more difficult and expensive way of producing film. Then, you know, fast forward to now times, it's a lot easier to send stuff digitally. You have small little discs that can be sent all around the world, makes it easier for theatres, and then you've got online ways as well, you know, going into exhibition, you've got Netflix, you've got, you know, piracy websites, which again, we're not happy about, but it's a way it shows the exhibition online. You know, people watching on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, Instant Video. It's a completely different way to just the natural showing 6 weeks in the theatre or so, and then releasing on DVD, because I think you'd find that a lot of people, A, don't watch DVDs now, or B, don't have a DVD player. You know, it's all online. It's all, when can I buy this? Can I watch it now? But no, it's a very exciting time for that kind of thing, and it was something that was considered when making the film.
I mean, I assume you did your research on your audience as well. So how would you say technologies now, digital technologies, helped your better understanding of the audience that you were targeting, specifically in your genre, maybe?
Absolutely, yeah. I did my my research using things like SlideShare Online of people who have made slideshows on you know, how you need to look at your audience, and also looking on things like IMDb, which show, you know, how much money someone made in different countries, and how much money they've made from different outlets, and then you can sort of use that primary research turn it into your own secondary research, in, you know, turning that into better facts. So for mine, you know, you look at a film like a horror movie that's come out recently, like Get Out or It. Looking at that, you can see it's made hundreds of millions. Get Out, for instance, made $250 million in box office. Shows that, you know, using these different distribution and exhibition techniques can make you a lot of money. It was a small budget film, as obviously horrors tend to be, and making a lot of money in theatres and online shows that, you know, it's got a much wider range of you know, target population than we would have thought for horror. In that you'd think horror, you're looking for the specific thrill seekers and sort of people that, you know, want to be scared, which should be everyone. However, now you're looking at coming out of that niche market and entering more of a global sense of market, in terms of everyone wants to see it, rather than just people who tend to watch horrors over other genres. You've then got, you know, thinking about age. It used to be a lot more younger sense. However, now I think, rather than people in their 20s watching it, I think you can go up to any age limit, really, in terms of that global spread of population. And, you know, in the genre of horror, you know, the more scary something is, the better. Yet this seems to have just excited people. In films are getting scarier, and, you know, the numbers for how much they're making it just going up and up and up, which I don't think would have been expected a couple of years ago.
Okay, so would you be able to tell me your, like, maybe strengths and weaknesses, you know, 2 or 3 strengths and weaknesses of your piece, and you using the technologies, and how maybe you've developed over the years of using these technologies, or how you've implemented new ones?
My strengths and weaknesses, yeah, I'd say in terms of strengths, I think that I've used the technologies I've been given a lot better. For example, having a really good camera means that I'm getting better shots, I'm getting more diverse range of shots, and, you know, I'm working harder on really using the aspects of technologies that I've been given really well. You've then got things like Final Cut Pro, which, rather than last year, I'd say I've probably used iMovie a bit more. I'm using Final Cut Pro now, and I'm a lot better at using it after watching tutorials and stuff like that, which show that you know, my progression has really moved on. And it's easy to see that, you know, the progression is very good in terms of, you know, you look at the editing throughout the montage scene is quick. I've used things like the titles are all in the same, the 3 titles that I've used for the 2 actors' names are all the same time limit. They're smooth, and it's a lot easier to see the transitions into different scenes, whether last year I don't think you would have been able to see that, despite it being a different genre.
Final question. You know, all this is great, how you made the film and how it was successful and how it was easy to do, but could you be able to tell our viewers maybe how any technical difficulties came into the process of making the film, and what were they, and how did you overcome them, or did you overcome them?
Yeah, as I said before, technical difficulties did come throughout the process of making the film. For example, you know, you look at the Osmo was hard to sort of set up, and you know, the camera wasn't as good as Canon. My tripod often got very stiff and stuff like that, which meant it was very hard to film a lot of panning scenes. You've also got audio. Sometimes, you know, the microphone would fail and I'd have to reshoot a lot of the time. Lighting became a problem in terms of I didn't ever use artificial lighting. I always used natural. So it made it very hard to film a lot of the stuff, but you know, it was definitely outweighed by the experience that I used from previous years.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time.